Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and its Ukrainian proxies. Now, as we speak, the Russians are continuing to tighten its grip around the Kursk incursion. Every day, this pocket continues to get tighter and tighter as Russian forces continue to envelop and surround those 8 Ukrainian combat brigades that are just not operating inside of the Kursk Oblast, but further inside of Ukrainian territory as well. And there could be, again, between 11 and 8 Ukrainian combat brigades of various types continuing operations against Russian forces in this area of the conflict. Now, as we watch this war continue, we are seeing the Russian Federation continuing to be pushed into the sphere of influence, the sphere of military alliance with China, with North Korea, with Iran. At the same time, we are watching tensions increasing between North Korea and South Korea. Now, we know that North Korea has provided the Russian Federation with large amounts of various artillery munitions. It is also possible, per reports, that actual North Korean soldiers could be operating inside of the Ukraine and assisting Russian forces. Now, again, tensions are starting to increase between North Korea and South Korea. I'm going to go over to that area of the world real quick, where you, the viewer, can see exactly what is happening. So, right now, North Korea is destroying roadways that lead from South Korea into North Korea. Now, look, these roadways have been essentially abandoned. They are in not very good condition, but could be used in the event of war in which South Korean troops could cross into North Korea. Now, in all probability, the reason the North Koreans are destroying these roadways from north to south and south to north is symbolic. They are cutting the line between their two countries. As relationships deteriorate between East and West, between the United States and China, between Russia, the United States, and Western Europe, relationships will also be impacted between North and South Korea. Now, South Korea allegedly has used drones to cross into North Korea and drop anti-government propaganda leaflets inside of North Korea. This has upset the North Koreans, and now the North Koreans are posturing and stating that they could take military action to prevent further drone activity into North Korea. And again, as we see North Korean support for the Russian Federation, we will see the United States attempting to get South Korea to act in an aggressive manner against North Korea. And that's going to send North Korea into conniption fits, believe you me. Now, is this going to be war? Is this going to be the onset of war between South Korea and North Korea at some point? Not if North Korea goes on its own. What you have to worry about, could China be in the background of this conflict and offering direct support towards North Korea? In the event of large-scale global war, it would make sense to see North Korea, with the direct assistance of China, engaging South Korean and American forces in South Korea. It would continue to spread American production capacity in terms of providing munitions and ammunitions to the Ukraine. Obviously, if global war were to initiate and start, obviously you would see a conflict between Taiwan and China. The United States would have to be assisting Taiwan as well. Now, could the United States continue to provide assistance to the Ukraine? Could it provide assistance to Taiwan? Could it provide assistance to South Korea? It would stretch things. At the same time, the United States would probably enter the conflict. Now, if there is a war between North Korea and South Korea, the Chinese would have to intervene. The North Koreans could not go it alone against the South Koreans. Let's just go over some numbers real quick and try to give you some insight into the capabilities, at least from a production capacity and supply capacity, and more importantly, a money capacity, financial capacity. So the South Korean economy is about 1.6 to 1.7 trillion GDP. Its defense budget, the South Korean defense budget, non-wartime, about 2.5%, $45 billion. $45 billion. On par with a Western European power. Non-wartime. The North Koreans alone, the GDP is about 16 billion. 16 billion for North Korea versus 1.6 trillion for South Korea. The North Koreans spend about 26%, some believe it's higher than that, of its GDP towards defense. Now that equals about $4 billion US dollars. So again, South Korea, 45 billion in defense spending. 45 billion in defense spending. The entire GDP of North Korea is about 6 billion. And its defense budget's about 4 billion. So damn well impossible for the North Koreans to fight a protracted war against South Korea. Impossible. The technology gap is also significant. The South Korean military is significantly better than the North Korean military, especially in terms of air power, precision-guided weapon systems, and what have you. Now, obviously, North Korea has nuclear weapons. That offsets some things. But would North Korea go nuclear? Probably not. Probably not. The leadership of North Korea continues to want to maintain its quality of life. Look, if you are a higher echelon person in North Korea, you have a pretty good quality of life. Pretty good quality of life. And you want to keep that. If there was a nuclear exchange, then that all goes away. If North Korea uses a nuclear weapon against South Korea, the United States is going to respond. Probably with a nuclear weapon, probably against leadership targets in North Korea. And when I say a nuclear weapon, the U.S. would use nuclear weapons designed to penetrate the bunker systems of the North Korean leadership and detonate low-yield nuclear weapons inside of these fortified structures, these fortified bunkers under these mountains. The North Korean leadership does not want to lose its life. On top of that, if a major war were to break out between North Korea and South Korea, North Korea has about 100 days of supply, both of munitions and fuel, in which it could operate high-intensity warfare. 100 days. So you could not see a war of attrition between North Korea and South Korea. Any efforts by the North to attack South Korea would have to be based on essentially a 90-day plan. A 90-day plan for victory. And unfortunately, for the North Koreans, there is no path to victory against South Korea unless, and this is very important, unless China becomes directly involved. If China becomes directly involved and the North Korean military becomes, by extension, a part of the Chinese military, with large amounts of Chinese forces entering North Korea, with the Chinese Air Force directly supporting the North Koreans, with Chinese air defense systems pouring into North Korea to assist North Korea, that changes the game. Now look, a war between North Korea and South Korea would not be the primary focus of global war. It would be part of China's strategy to sap the strength of the United States. The United States would be forced to help the South Koreans, especially if the Chinese got involved. If it was just the North Koreans versus the South Koreans could handle the North Koreans outside the use of nuclear weapons. But when you throw in the Chinese to the equation, it changes everything, especially if you were to see multiple Chinese corps entering North Korea. Again, the Chinese military is much more advanced than the North Korean military. They have better tanks. They have better air defense systems. More importantly, they have a much better air force. So if you were to see hundreds of Chinese multi-role aircraft being used against South Korea, that would challenge the South Korean Air Force, and especially if you move in the Chinese Navy as well. But again, South Korean military incredibly robust, and would definitely even give the Chinese problems. But the production capacity of the Chinese, the size of the Chinese military, would just be too much at the end of the day for the South Koreans. But again, the war on the Korean Peninsula would just be a part of the overall global war that we see is coming. That eventually the war on the Korean Peninsula will be part of the global war between China, the Russian Federation, Iran, North Korea, and other allied nation states. Again, this war between the Ukraine and the West has pushed Russia into this sphere of influence. It has created this multinational Eastern alliance of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. That is an incredible military capability, the likes of which the United States has not seen since World War II. Imagine just for a minute, if we go back into history, we go back to 1940. Imagine if Germany had not invaded the Soviet Union. Imagine for a minute if, in fact, the Soviet Union would have created an anti-Western alliance with Germany. What would have happened during World War II? What would have happened? Obviously, the outcome could very well have been much different if, in fact, we had seen an alliance between the Soviet Union and Germany. We didn't see that. Germany made an incredible mistake by invading the Soviet Union. If Hitler had not done that and increased his relationship with the Soviets, with Joseph Stalin, and had created an alliance. There was already an alliance there. They mutually agreed to invade Poland. So if they could have furthered that alliance and joined with the Axis powers, World War II would have looked much, much different. Now, the same thing is happening right now. The West is pushing the Russians into the arms of China. You are seeing this cohesive relationship being formed between China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and in all probability other nation states. This is an incredibly precarious moment in history, both in terms of what is going to happen and the strategic situation. You do not do what you're doing right now and expect to win. And what I mean by that, pushing Russia and China into a military alliance. This is a very, very difficult proposition, especially, and you're seeing what is happening right now with North Korea and South Korea. Believe you me, if the balloon goes up between South and North Korea, it is going to be with the full backing and support of China and even the Russian Federation directly supporting North Korea. And it'll just escalate from there. Now, is it going to start? Is it going to continue to escalate in the Korean Peninsula? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. But the war continues. As we had talked about earlier, this Kursk pocket is continuing to collapse. We do expect a full Russian victory in the Kursk area of operations, and then the war of attrition will continue over the winter as Russians continue to degrade and destroy the Ukrainian military with renewed offensive operations, renewed large-scale offensive operations starting in the summer, possibly in the winter. The Russians like to launch large-scale offensive operations in the winter, and we could see one. Where? Is it Zaporizhia? Is it a continued push in the Donbass? We don't know. But what we do know for certain is the Russians are aiming to win this war. And they will continue to fight until the war is won. And then the question is how much further is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the United States willing to support the Ukrainians? The only way that the Russians would lose is with direct NATO involvement, meaning the entire air force of the combined powers of the United States and Western Europe were to intervene in the conflict. And then you know what happens after that. World War. The use of tactical nuclear weapons in all probability. And the balloon goes up, and then go watch the movie The Threads, and you can see what happens after that. Thank you for joining us today. More to come as always. Thanks for joining us. Have a good day.